Hey guys, what's up? I'm Erin and welcome back to the channel. Here's a wild thought. I'm going to be 60 years old in 2047, so that's my rough retirement horizon. But retirement is going to look very different in 2047 than it does today in 2025. So I thought we could take a moment, do a little bit of time traveling, and try to figure out what retirement might look like, and importantly, what we can do to prepare today. If you think back to the year 2000, could anyone have predicted what 2025 would look like? Smartphones, AI, medical breakthroughs, the way we live, the way we work today is almost unrecognizable. And if we're trying to fast forward 20 years, I bet there's going to be a surprising number of breakthroughs and things we can't even imagine coming ahead by 2047. So that's why when you're talking about planning something that is a long time horizon away, it's not about getting the exact details, it's about having flexibility in your plan. Like I said, in 2047, I'll be 60. So we're going to use those numbers for our case study. Suppose someone today has $300,000 invested. What might that grow to in 22 years' time? Well, here we might turn to something like the rule of 72. Simply divide 72 by your expected rate of return, and it will tell you how many years it takes your money to double. At an 8% rate of return, money doubles roughly every 9 years. It's simple, it's a fun mental shortcut, and the higher the expected rate of return, the more quickly your money doubles. So between now and 2047, that $300,000 could double about 2.4 times. Without adding a single new dollar, you'd be looking at around 1.6 million. But here's where things get really interesting. Let's say you're also saving consistently. Let's say you're diligently saving 20% of your income. So you're not simply relying on compounding, you're stacking new contributions on top of this compounding. Let's put some numbers to it. Imagine someone earning $100,000 a year, saving 20% into investments, and already sitting on a $300,000 investment balance. Over the next 22 years, at an 8% rate of return, that portfolio could grow to about $2.74 million. Roughly $1.6 million comes from just compounding on the beginning balance. Another $1.1 comes from contributions and compounding on those contributions. That's how people go from just a few $100,000 to multi-millions of dollars in retirement. It's just consistent savings and compounding on top of that. Now, I know we just got really excited about that multi-million dollar number, but we need a reality check because inflation is always working in the background. Economists often talk about price doubling time, essentially the time it takes for the cost of everything to double. At a 2% inflation rate, it would take 36 years. At a 3% inflation, 24 years, and 4% inflation, just 18 years. The long-term rate of inflation in the US hovers around 3%, so that means we can expect the value of the dollar to be cut in half every 23 to 24 years. So that means by 2047, $1 million then might only feel like $500,000 today. And it's not just that $1 million portfolio might spend like a $500,000 portfolio today. You have to think about it in terms of the price of goods. If you're looking at a $40,000 vehicle today, that vehicle might be $80,000 by 2047. Or your $5 latte, maybe that's $10 or $12. So let's go back to that $2.7 million portfolio that we just celebrated. Fast forward 22 years' time, and it might only feel like a portfolio that is 1.3 or 1.4 million. That's a really powerful perspective, and it's not meant to induce panic. It's meant to create a sense of urgency, but importantly, we want it to be channeled urgency. Because so long as you are investing, you're already fighting against inflation with compounding. Simply ignoring inflation is the fastest way to underprepare. Longevity is something we don't talk about enough. On practically every single video that gets posted that discusses retirement or withdrawal strategies, you will see comments that say life expectancy is only 75 or maybe a little bit higher for women. Now, that's true, assuming you're looking at life expectancy from birth. But here's the key. If you make it to the age of 60, those numbers look very different. About 1 in 3 men who reach the age of 60 will will live past the age of 90. For women, it's closer to 1 in 2. Average life expectancy for men at age 60 is around 82 to 83 years old. For women, it's 85 to 86. So that means if you retire at the age of 60, you very well could have a retirement that spans 25, 30, or more years. So you want to make sure you prepare for this with your portfolio. You don't want a portfolio that runs out before you run out of time. And it's not just about how long you live, it's also about how well you live. And this is where health span comes in. And the choices we make in our 20s and our 30s and our 40s and our 50s impact how we feel later in life. Science backs this up. A 2025 study out of Finland followed people born in 1959 into their 60s. And what they found is that habits that were picked up in midlife, habits like dietary choices, whether or not you drink or how much you drink, how active you are or how inactive you are, all of these habits tend to collectively start to show their effects by the time you're in your 40s. And these types of habits are all tied to your risk of heart disease, stroke, cancer, depression, even the risk of early death. Now, there isn't really a magic decade where you have to get healthy by or it's too late, but the earlier you take your health into your own hands, the more benefit you will see later in life. So I tend to think of your late 30s and your early 40s as this really pinnacle time where you don't want to let your health slide. And I'll be really honest, I'm a person who's been pretty health conscious pretty much all my life. I'm very active, I try to eat well, but as I hone in on 40, it is not easier. Life gets busier, stress gets higher, and honestly, just finding that time for myself is harder to do. But I still make it a priority because I know if I let it slip now, it's going to be so much harder to get back in my 50s or my 60s. And here's where all of this ties back to your finances. A longer, healthier retirement is going to require a more robust portfolio. Imagine you retire in 2047 with $1.5 million. What happens if the market drops 20% next year or even 30%? Do you have a plan that lets you keep paying your bills without panic? If you start thinking about these possibilities now, it is much easier to build a rock-solid plan when you have 2 decades or so to plan for them. Because retirement isn't about just making it to 90 and surviving, it's about making it there with dignity and living the life you want. And then there's Social Security. Will it be around in 2047? Highly likely, but it may not look the same. My generation has over 20 years before we're eligible for Social Security, so we may see some changes implemented. So I like to be conservative when I do estimates. So if I look at a benefit and it says I'm going to receive, say, $3,000 a month, I might only use 70 or 80% of that figure when I run projections. Here's why. What if that benefit was cut by 20%? That's suddenly $600 less every month. That's over $7,000 a year. But if you run your plan and your projections now with a reduced number, once you hit retirement, you could absorb a shock like that and just take it in stride and it wouldn't affect you. And if by the time you get there, full benefits are available, well, that's just a bonus. That's why I like being conservative. It's always better to be a little bit more conservative, or some might even say to err on the side of being a bit more pessimistic than it is to be overly optimistic and come up short. And I don't want it to come across as though I have a Pollyanna attitude about this. I don't, but I like to focus on what I can control. And how Social Security benefits are paid out in 20 years' time is beyond my scope of control. What I can control is how I plan and how I personally build wealth. So if you're in your 20s today, maybe you don't even factor Social Security at all into your plan yet. 30s and 40s, maybe you factor in a percentage of it. If you're in your 50s or 60s and at or near retirement, go ahead and factor in that full benefit that you see, because those numbers are unlikely to change for you. And this is also why everyone should have an account set up with myssa.gov. It's completely free and it allows you to see your numbers tailored to your work experience, and you can build a plan around that. And of course, we can't talk about retirement in 2047 without talking about healthcare. It's one of the biggest expenses that retirees face and also one of the hardest to predict. Right now, the average couple retiring today is expected to spend over $300,000 on healthcare during retirement. And that doesn't even factor in long-term care if that's something that's needed down the road. By the time we hit 2047, that number could easily surpass $500,000 once you factor in inflation, simply just the rising cost of healthcare and longer lifespans. But this is also the tricky part. No one really knows what healthcare is going to look like in 2 decades' time. What if technology has a way of making things more affordable? On the one hand, AI might be utilized for diagnostics and find issues earlier when they're less expensive. Or maybe there's home monitoring systems that prevent extensive hospital stays. But I also think we could look at it the opposite way. Those same breakthroughs in technology might make care more expensive and increase the standard of care. Then there's long-term care. Will insurance reimbursement rates or Medicare rates change over time? Will AI or robotics make it so that people can live at home independently for longer stretches? Will this continue to be one of the biggest health costs that retirees face? The reality is, healthcare is a moving target, which is why when you build your retirement plan, you don't want to just budget for your lifestyle, you also want to leave some margin in there. Because no matter how good your projections are, healthcare expenses can have a way of surprising you, so you want to build enough margin in here that it doesn't have a way of derailing your plan. I don't want you to just look at your portfolio. I want you to look at the kind of life you want in retirement. Because at the end of the day, your portfolio is just a tool to build the life you want. And I think another thing to hang on to is that your idea of retirement will evolve over time. If you would have asked me about retirement when I was 20, I would have told you that my goal was to have an early retirement at the age of 40. But now, as I hone in on 40, I can't imagine retiring at 40. I still feel so young. I feel like there's so much I still want to do. So nowadays, I kind of talk about maybe 55, maybe 60, maybe never. And I know that that will change with time too. How I felt 10 years ago is not how I feel today. And very likely, how I will feel 10 years from now is not how I feel today. This is why it's so important when you make a plan that you're not locking yourself into one vision. Instead, you make a plan so it gives you a direction, but you remain flexible in your approach. I always like to think of it that our plans and our goals are written in pencil. You can go back, cross them out, erase it, write new ones. What matters is that you're going after your goals and your desires at that phase of life. So here's something to really think about. What does your perfect day in retirement look like? Are you traveling the world? Or are you playing with your grandkids? Are you volunteering? Or are you living in a cabin by a lake? Now ask yourself, how much does this lifestyle cost? How much might it cost in 20 or 30 years' time? This is where your personal vision and the retirement numbers intersect. So when I picture retirement in 2047, here's what I see. A portfolio built not just by compounding, but also by consistent contributions. A plan that assumes I might live into my 90s. Conservative assumptions around Social Security. A strategy that outpaces inflation. Margin for healthcare and long-term care. And above all, flexibility, because just like retirees in the year 2000 couldn't picture what 2025 would look like, we can't picture what 2047 will look like, but we can save and we can invest. We can create a plan that helps us to get excited rather than be afraid. And here are 4 things you can do today to make that retirement in 2047 or whatever year it is for you feel more real today. Check your Social Security estimate at myssa.gov. Run your own Rule of 72 math with your current balance. Picture your retirement lifestyle and price it out. And remember, the dollar gets cut in half every 20 to 25 years. And stress test your plan against a 20 or 30% market drop. Little steps today will compound into a retirement that you're actually looking forward to. What year are you planning on stepping away? Share your thoughts in a comment down below. I post new videos every single week. If you got anything at all out of this one, please give it a like. If you're new here, please consider subscribing, or if you know of someone who might get something out of this type of content, please consider sharing. I'll see you soon. Bye. I think we're done. I'm 30 seconds into this video, and today is just not a filming day. The quicker your money to double, the doubles. Oh my goodness. Growth on the existing balance. My mom has the worst time for calling. Nah. Fun fact, whenever I'm frustrated, I go, nah, was actually something my grandpa did. So I picked it up from him apparently. And so my mom calls it out every time I'm frustrated. I'm just like, ah.